One of my viewers found this PS Vita in a storage unit that he only paid $50 for. He said that it charges and it'll turn on, but not all the time. So we're gonna look at this one first. If we have time, we'll look at this PS Vita that I paid $80 for. It was dropped in water, so let's check this one out first, and if we have time, we'll get to this one. Let's first see if it'll charge. We have an orange light that blinks. Now, a lot of times an orange light on a PSP just means that the battery needs to be charged for a while. However, I've had this battery charging for a couple hours and it's still blinking orange, so I think we have a deeper problem. Let's see if it'll turn on, and we get no power. So the first thing we need to do is check out the battery. And just taking a quick look at this board, I don't see any issues at all. And actually, just looking, we do have kind of like some debris over here on the board. Something kind of sticky. That's not good news. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so we might have some liquid issues on this one, but let's try and plug this into power. I've heard these things can power up without the battery, so let's try it out. And we get nothing. Okay, so let's try and replace the battery and then see if it'll power up. Oh, but before I do that, let's test this one. Got my meter set on DC voltage. 3.6 volts out of, I believe these are 3.7 volt batteries. We might have to remove it in order to tell. So that's actually not that bad. And let's check the voltage of this replacement battery. This is just one that I have sitting around. I just stole it off of a different PS Vita that was not working. 3.795. Okay, and this is a 3.7 volt battery. So we should have a lot more luck with this one. Let's install this battery into this PSP and see what happens. I feel like there's probably something else going on with it, but this is just a quick, easy way to check that. And it goes like that. There we go. Now we'll just plug this battery back in. I'm not going to plug the back plate back because we don't need that part, just to test. All right, so first of all, does it charge? And our light stays orange. Let's try and turn it on. Look at that! So all that was wrong with this one is the battery. So even though this is showing 3.6 volts, maybe it's just bad. I'm actually going to keep this on a charger just to make sure, because I don't want to recycle these batteries if they might be good, because these aren't really available anymore. So it looks like PSP number 1 is working now with the new battery, but we still got to inspect this liquid damage because I don't want to put it all back together if there's damage on the board. So let's do that now. And I do see a little bit of evidence of liquid right here. We already know there's some over on this end of the board. So I'm going to start taking this section apart and see if I can see if liquid got down in here, if it was mostly on the surface, and then the same thing over on this side. A little bit of stickiness down in there, not too bad though. Looks like this button was spared. Actually don't really see anything else. I think I should probably take this board out down here, and then also this board over here. And while I'm at it, I might as well just take the main board out just to inspect it and make sure there's no liquid down there as well. And now, this one's kind of tricky because they have these little holding tabs right here. Same with the other one actually. So I just lift it up, put a little pressure on it, and then lift on it and it just comes right out. All right, now we should be basically free with this board. There we go. Okay, and the other side looks like it could use a good cleaning. We actually have a little bit of liquid residue here, a little bit of corrosion, but nothing serious. So that's good news. And then down inside here, there's maybe a little bit of evidence of liquid, but really not much. So nothing too much to worry about there. Let's move over to this side. Remove that locking tab. Okay, and just a tiny bit right here, but really not bad at all. All right, now we need to remove the main board. Will it come out? Oh yeah, it's got the screen connector under there. I just want to see how the board looks though. I don't even necessarily need to disconnect the screen, but let's get a good view of it. Okay, what do we think? Any problems at all? This board is really clean. There's a little bit of residue over here, not much at all. I'm not even sure that that's from any liquid damage that got in here. It's like a stain on the game card reader there. All right, I'm actually just gonna put this in. This looks really good. Let's look underneath. And we need to do a bit of cleaning here, but really, this isn't bad at all. I'm just gonna get my toothbrush and some isopropyl alcohol and go through here and clean this up. Then we'll be ready to reinstall all the boards and then just retest and make sure everything works at the end. We can now install the Wi-Fi card, and I will show this. I'm not going to skip past this just because this part's actually kind of tricky. My first few of these a long time ago. Took me a long time to get right. Okay, I have to remember the white one goes through here. Like that. And then this snaps on, just clips on, I believe. Clip on. Yeah, there we go. Then the white one gets threaded through these little channels. There we go. And then it plugs on right here, just like that. And then it also threads through these guys right here. There we go. All right. And then these guys just thread through these little tabs under here. This part's pretty easy. I think the white wire is usually one that was most confusing for me. Okay, there we go. We gotta fit it down in this little channel. And here we go. All right. That's in. And these just slip right on here. This one goes here. And there we go. Now with all that done, we can install the battery connector and then the connector for this back plate, both. Do the back plate first, then the battery, and there we go. We do need to make sure this camera lines up correctly as we place it down, and it does. All right, and now with it all clean and all back together, let's see if it charges. Should get an orange light, and we do. Charge is good. Now let's just double check and make sure it turns on. And there we go. So PS Vita number 1 is all fixed up. Obviously, I do need to test a game in it and several other things, but so far this one's looking good. Let's move on to PS Vita number 2. And PS Vita number 2 does charge. Let's try to turn it on. We just get nothing. Now I know this one was dropped in some sort of liquid, so let's open it up and see how bad the damage is, and hopefully it's just water. Sometimes when people say liquid damage, it's not really the kind of liquid you want to be dealing with. Well, there's the first problem. We've got a broken locking tab down here, which is for the back case, which isn't a big deal. Oh, I already see some corrosion. Is that missing pieces? We might have some missing pieces right there too. Let's get this battery disconnected. I don't want to short anything out using my metal pick. Okay, battery disconnected. Let's see if there's any voltage in the battery. Yeah, 4.17 volts. Okay, for a 3.7 volt battery, that is fully charged. All right, so now we need to disassemble pretty much the entire thing because I don't know what was damaged or where the damage occurred. So let's just start taking it apart and see what we find out. I believe this is the area responsible for charging. Got some issues over here. Let's get this thing under a microscope and see what we're dealing with. So this area is definitely a problem, but this is only a small problem compared to what we have going on down here. Right there. So we got some major issues over here. And yeah, this definitely needs to be cleaned up. What else do we have? Over here, we've got some major issues going on right here. So far, I think all of this stuff will clean up just fine. I don't see anything that looks like it's going to be permanent, but some of this you just don't really know. This is probably the most worrying part though, right here. I'm not 100% sure what this chip does, but it's got a lot of corrosion all around it. And then we've also got some issues over here. Not too bad, but definitely some issues. So this is a perfect example of why there's no point in putting your wet devices in rice. Rice does absolutely nothing. If the person I bought this from wouldn't have put it in rice, all of this would have looked exactly the same. This actually looks maybe like the worst part of it. It looks like maybe we've got some traces here for electricity to follow, so that could be some of the worst of it. And then around on that other chip on the other side. But what I'm going to do first is just go through with a toothbrush and some 99% isopropyl alcohol, and let's see if we can get this corrosion removed. Now I am using a metal dental pick, which I actually don't recommend for most people. I use it because it's what works for me, but you got to be super careful with stuff like this. You can easily be breaking this stuff, these tiny components off the board. Another reason that I don't mind using it is because even if I did break them off, I could fix it real quick, so that's the other reason I use it, but I don't actually normally recommend people use that. Okay, that's not too bad. Now this pad right here definitely is an issue, but the thing is it's not connected to anything. And actually, yeah, I don't think that's connected to anything. It almost looked like maybe there's a little connection here, but I don't think it actually is. I'm gonna scrape off a little bit of this solder mask, just so we can get a better view of this and just make sure it's not supposed to be going somewhere connected to anything. Yeah, I think what has happened is it has eaten through this pad right here, and then this is just getting down to the other layers on the board, so I'm not going to keep scraping at this because I don't want to wear away the rest of the layers of the board. So we're just going to leave that as is and move on to the next area. And we're going to get this little area right up here. This doesn't look that bad, actually. So a little toothbrush with some IPA. That just cleans that right up. And that's with it dry. So that is completely gone. Now let's move down to a little more important of an area. I also don't know what this chip does, but probably people in the comment section do. I'm just scraping this just to get any of these loose pieces off a little bit. Same with over here. Oh man, how did I not even notice this area right here? That looks pretty bad right there. That's definitely an issue. Let's see how that cleans up. Let's try this dental pick. Yeah, it's got a little bit finer of a tip. Okay, that looks a lot better. I'm gonna clean up this battery connector, I mean, a little bit more. It really doesn't look too bad now that it's cleaned up, but I want to get it just a little bit better. So it looks like we have two resistors and this capacitor and this capacitor. This is another resistor here. These don't look to be in the best shape, so I'm going to get my meter out and see if they're shorted or not. If they are, we'll need to do something about that. So got my meter set on resistance mode. Let's see what the resistance of this resistor is. 1000 kiloohms, 10 kiloohms, and 8.75 kiloohms. So those all seem to be fine. Now it's time for this side of the board. Let's clean this part first. Yeah, it's going to clean up just fine there. Now this part though might be different. Let's find out. So what you notice is I'm trying to move my brush from side to side as I'm cleaning. That just gets the bristles at different angles so it can clean at all different angles while I'm moving it back and forth to clean this thing. Okay, and other than a little bit of discoloration right here, that all cleaned up seemingly really good. And my meter is in resistance mode again. So I'm going to put one lead right there and one right up here. And we're showing under 2 ohms, 1.5. And it would actually even be better if I had a little bit better connection. There we go, we're down at 0.8. So this solder connection is fine. Let's test this one. Okay, this one looks like a main voltage connection because it's got multiple pins. And a lot of times these planes where all these little dots are voltage connections. Yeah, we got 0.8 here too. As you can see, there's a little bit of that white residue we can start to see visible now again. So I'm going to go through and clean this all again. And I'm just going to keep cleaning it until that stays gone. That tells me that it is all fully cleaned. Okay, really not too bad. Now we can get this thing back together enough to test and see if it's going to turn on. Let's see what happens when we plug it in to charge. We do get the orange light. Let's see what happens when we try to turn it on. We get nothing. Well, it's time to take it back apart and see if we can figure out what's going on the board. Since we have several BGA chips on this board that have been affected by corrosion, we can't really clean those very effectively because we can't get underneath. I decided to pull out my ultrasonic cleaner to clean this board, and using an ultrasonic cleaner can sort of clean out underneath all of the BGA chips. It doesn't do a perfect job, but it does much better than you can do by hand. So here we go with our board. I'm gonna put it down in here one way like this. And I will turn it on here for just a second so you can kind of see what it does, but I'm not gonna leave the cover off the whole time. Here we go. And the first side is done. Whoops. So we will pull it up, flip it over, and let it do the other side. And the second side is done. I think I'm actually gonna let this soak in here for a little bit and then do each side one more time. Then we'll pull it out and have a look at it. All right, and we are now all done. Just giving this a good little rinse off. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Now what I'm gonna do is take some BW100 and basically just spray it all over the entire board. This will help displace any water that got any cracks or crevices or under any of these chips. All right, and now I'm just gonna let this air dry. I'll probably actually just let it air dry overnight just to make sure that it is completely dry. And then we'll try installing it back into the PS Vita and see if that's enough to fix it. Now that this board is all clean, I've been inspecting it again, and I took a quick look at this area again, and I was thinking that there's no connections on this pad right here, but what I just noticed is there is a line that goes from here, and it should go all the way over to this capacitor and then over to this pad. But as you can see here, it is broken. This is the connector for the power button, so if this line is broken, that could be preventing this PS Vita from turning on. So what I'm gonna do now is run a wire from over on this trace somewhere, probably from this pad right here, all the way over to this pad right here, connect it to the capacitor, and that will bypass this break and create a full restored circuit on this PS Vita board. The first thing I'm gonna do is come in with some flux and put on the areas that I'm gonna solder. The flux just helps the solder flow. Then I'm gonna add some solder to the copper pad. Then I'm going to solder on a little tiny wire to that pad, and then I'll solder the wire onto the other pad and the capacitor. Now this part we technically don't need to do because the circuit does connect to this capacitor, and it would probably be fine, but I just want to make sure there's a really good connection here. Okay, now I'm just gonna cut this tail off right there. Now we just need to come in and clean that up and inspect the joints. They look pretty good, but I do like to just give them a little inspection just to make sure. And hopefully that'll be enough to get this thing working. We've done quite a bit of work on it so far, and it'd be great to see this thing start up. Just gotta let that dry and then we'll install it and see if it works. And before we forget, okay, to be honest, I already forgot, but before I forget again, we need to replace this connector. Now there is a chance I could replace just this locking tab, but I don't want to break the locking tab that I have trying to install it into here, so I'm just going to remove this and solder a new one on. There are several ways that I can get this old connector off. I'm choosing to use a soldering iron, my large soldering iron that gets the hottest, to just basically melt it all off. I don't recommend this unless you have fume extraction, and even then it's probably not the best idea, so I definitely don't recommend doing it this way, but this is the way that I've chosen to do it today. So I'm going to come in with my large iron and just melt all of this plastic off, and then once that's done, I will install the new connector, and then I just need to solder on each of the small pins along with the 2 mounting pins, and then it should be good to go, and we should be finally ready to install this thing and see if it works. So here we go with the flux. We need plenty of it. Now it is time to install the new connector. And we got to get this thing lined up really close to where we want it. Because once you start tacking these pins down, if you get 2 pins down and they're not where you need them to be, it's just a real pain to ever fix that. So it is difficult because everything with this is so tiny. Yep. So what I'm going to do is grab it like this, put it about where we want it, solder one leg on, and then just double check everything. There we go. Ooh, that's... okay. So what I'm actually going to do now is bring my solder wick in and wick a bunch of the solder away. I can't get the connector to sit down on here all the way. And the reason is because there's too much solder on everything. So let's fix that. Now, it should sit down on here a lot flatter. It is a little more difficult to solder because there's not a fresh bead of solder on each of these pins. But the fact that we can get it to sit down on here flat like we want kind of makes up for that. Okay, so about right there is where we need it. A little bit of flux over here, a little bit over there. There we go. Now we'll come back in with my iron and resolder that little connection right there. There we go. This one's really not wanting to take any solder. It's probably because it's a larger plane here, so it takes a lot more heat. I might need to do that one with my large iron, but it's really nice being able to get in here with my small one, so I'm going to try that first a few times. Oh, that pin definitely needs to be better. Okay, and each of these pins looks good, nice and solid. And same with the pins on the front side. So now we can finally get this installed and see if it works. And I have it connected just enough to test. Let's press the power button. I don't have the screen or anything connected, just enough to see if this power button will light up the green light. Oh, it does. That is great news. Okay, so I'm gonna get this thing put back together the rest of the way and then we'll see if the screen will start up. Okay, it's all together. Let's see if it's gonna turn on. Oh, green light, good. Come on. Oh, picture on the screen. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so this PS Vita is all fixed. If you want to see a similar video where I take 9 broken PS Vitas and I try and fix them, I'll put that up on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see if I was able to fix them. Thanks again for watching today. Go check out TronicsFix.com and check out our new merch, and I hope you have a good one.